Welcome back, guys. We're going to be checking out the Red Demon 685 pass in our data log. So for those of you that don't know, the Red Demon is a 1995 Mitsubishi Eclipse. We drag race with the car, specifically quarter mile drag racing. We've gone as fast as 685, 215 miles an hour, and makes roughly 2,000 horsepower. So check it out. So yeah, that's a little bit about Red Demon, but I know you guys are anxious to see this, so let's check it out. All right, what we've got up here is the RPM from the pass. So why don't you zoom in here, Andrew? Perfect. All right, so you guys can see this is the pass. This is actually the burnout over here. So we're gonna come in here on the pass and we're gonna zoom in. All right, and what you can notice, this is launch control, where the RPMs are steady. Launch the car, this is first gear, right? This, shift it, second gear, shift, third gear, shift, and then this is fourth gear. All right, so something that strikes you right away is right here, we're on the rev limiter, right, for, let's see how long we're on the rev limiter for, 0.4 of a second, and then over here in fourth gear, we're also on the rev limiter for 0.45 of a second. So that's 0.85 of a second on the rev limiter. Right, and that was on our personal best pass. So pretty incredible. Right, so I'm going to pull up another piece of information here that I think you guys will enjoy seeing. So this is boost pressure. The red line is boost pressure. So you can see first gear, we make less boost than in second gear, and we make less boost than in third gear, and then in fourth gear we make the most boost. So in first gear, just to give you guys an idea of what kind of boost we're making, about 65 pounds of boost. Second gear, 80 pounds of boost. Third gear, on the top of third gear, we're at 90 pounds of boost. And then fourth gear, right here, 103 pounds of boost. So when you take a look at this log, and I saw it, I initially thought that right here, I was going to have a speak with the driver, right, and figure out what was going on. I think he shifted the car late or something. But then you pop in here, and I actually have something pretty cool, transmission input shaft speed. And we can go like this, pop it on the trace. This blue line represents what the transmission is doing. So essentially the transmission and the engine should be locked together at all times, and they should match, just like it does in second and third and fourth, right? Where it deviates is either where you have the clutch pedal in, or the clutch is actually slipping. So you can see here in first gear, the input shaft speed and the engine RPM are not the same. And if you actually zoom in here on the input shaft speed, we can see I shifted the car right at 11,200 input shaft speed. So according to input shaft speed, I hit the shift point correctly. But according to engine RPM, I was on the limiter for a while. So exactly how much this slowed the pass down, I don't think it really slowed it down too much. Although the car was limiting power, input shaft speed was still increasing, and so was vehicle speed, which we'll check out here in a little bit. So right here in fourth gear, you can also see, we'll zoom in on it. Engine RPM, 11,000, almost 400, and input shaft speed, only about 10,000 RPM. So you can see the clutch was slipping right there. Right, the reason for the clutch slip, I think, might have something to do with this little guy. So that green line is the nitrous button. So when I hit fourth gear, got a little excited, grabbed the nitrous button basically right here, and it didn't take long for the clutch to slip. And I let off the nitrous once I noticed it was slipping, and it actually came back down and the clutch grabbed. So this slip in the beginning of the pass was just because the clutch was not happy. It was slipping. Shouldn't have been slipping. There was a lot of passes on this clutch. It wasn't fresh. It kind of is what it is. Didn't hurt the pass too much, right? And I think because that clutch was hurt, we saw that slippage in fourth gear too when I hit the nitrous button. So initially when you look at this, you would say, hey, the driver missed the shift, but then when you look at input shaft speed, it was actually where it should have been. So pretty excited about that. Problem is slipping on the big end is always not good. So if I had to guess, you know, there was definitely something to be gained on this pass. Whether it was a whole lot, you know, I'm not really too sure. I don't think it was really too much, to be honest with you. So let's grab vehicle speed here, and I'll show you something else. So pretty interesting as well. If you look at vehicle speed, you can see even though RPM is stuck at the same point this entire time, you can see vehicle speed is increasing. Right, so that's that clutch slip we were saying. If the clutch wasn't slipping and you're on the rev limiter, your vehicle speed just stays the same. So this kind of confirms that I don't know that the pass was slowed down too much by it, and this vehicle speed kind of confirms it. Same thing in fourth gear here. When you've got the clutch slip in fourth gear, you can see vehicle speed is still increasing. So yes, there's something to be had there. How much? I guess we'll have to see. Right, because we're going to be pushing the car harder, don't worry. Another really cool aspect of the car that I think you guys will like to see is, we talked about this earlier, we got the RPM, right? We also have transmission input shaft speed. So based on those two values, you can actually see how much the clutch is slipping or not slipping. So we use that data to help tune the launch and how the clutch slips out of the hole, because that's basically how we regulate power in first gear. So we do that with a Magnus slipper valve, and I'll show you guys that here real quick. And that basically allows us to slip the clutch more or less off the line. So what we can do is, we've actually got this sensor, it's clutch pressure, we log that as well. So we can see the clutch pressure as it comes down, and as the clutch pressure, or as the clutch pedal is depressed. So as you can see, the clutch pedal is fully depressed. You're at like 750 clutch pressure. Usually this clutch locks up. This specific pressure plate, we use many different types of pressure plates, but this specific pressure plate was locking up at about 400 PSI clutch pressure. So essentially, right about right here, the clutch should have been fully locked up. You can see right here, there's a 4,200 RPM difference. So the clutch was not happy in this pass. It didn't lock up the way that it should, and we can see that in the log, right? Now, if I were to look at this log, I would say, hey guys, we got to put a clutch in the car, right? You can also see the clutch is slipping, because right here, you're almost at no clutch pressure, right? We got 37 pounds clutch pressure, which is basically all the way off the clutch, and it's still 3,000 RPM different. You know what I mean? So this clutch wasn't happy. That's okay. I mean, I don't think it slowed down this pass very much. We have great guys over at Quartermaster, and they're actually working right now with us to try and develop a clutch that's going to hold a little bit more power and also be more regulatable and more slippable as we launch the car. So another cool aspect of tuning the clutch. Also, something that's really, really helpful with this car is the stock vehicle speed sensor is not used. We use a high resolution speed sensor that's based on drive shaft speed. So we'll actually let you guys check that out too. What that does is that gives us a nice, consistent, steady vehicle speed. And it actually, we can see vehicle speed right as the car starts rolling or barely rolling. Right? We've got a 16-tooth reluctor wheel on our drive shaft. So even the smallest amount of movement gets a couple teeth past that sensor and gets the sensor reading. Where the factory sensor, you've probably got to go 3 or 4 miles an hour before it reads anything. So this sensor will pick up the little bit of roll out of the hole, or the little clutch, or the little bump in, you know, to the second bulb. It'll pick up everything. So that's really, really helpful too, and something that, you know, we take full advantage of with the Red Demon and our Haltech engine management system. So this is pretty interesting information too. So basically, we've got a sensor on the car that will obviously sense boost pressure, how much pressure you're forcing into the engine. We also have something that measures the exhaust manifold pressure, or what some to refer as the drive pressure, what's driving the turbocharger. So the exhaust drives the turbocharger, so that's the exhaust pressure. So basically, the red line on that bottom graph is boost pressure. All right, so at 89 pounds of boost pressure, I have 74 pounds of drive pressure. So usually the sweet spot is 1-to-1. If you're anywhere close to 1-to-1, especially if you're below a 1-to-1 ratio, you're in really, really good shape. We are well below a 1-to-1 ratio on this. So that says that by no means are we maxing out the exhaust side of the turbocharger. We're creating more boost pressure than we are actually driving the turbo, which is one reason why I really, really love these Apex turbos, is that's where they run, in that ratio, below the 1-to-1 ratio. And that's really where you can start making power. Once you get above 1-to-1 ratio, that's presenting a restriction to your exhaust flow. So really, really good sign there. So we're gonna kind of always keep that RPM graph up there to kind of show you guys where it is in the past. Remember, this is on launch control. Launch the car, first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, right? So what we're looking at right here is our flat shift, or our no lift shift. So we have something special on the car called a strain gauge. So it's a gauge that goes on the shifter handle, and based on the force that you put on that shifter handle, it inputs a voltage to the ECU. So it rests at 2.5 volts. That's what this pink line is. I'll kind of highlight it for you. Not this green line, but the pink one. Right? That's the sensor that's on my shifter. So it rests at 2.5 volts. When I pull back on it, the voltage goes up. When I let go, it goes back to 2.5. Right? When I push forward on it, the voltage goes down. And then it comes back to 2.5 when you're done. And then again for the shift to fourth, when you pull on it, the voltage goes back up. So based on this voltage change, the car knows when I'm trying to shift it. Right? So it triggers a limiter or an engine cut based on that voltage change in the shifter. So you don't have to let off the gas, you don't have to hit the clutch pedal, you don't have to do any of that. You just basically have to pick the right time to shift, stay wide open throttle, and pull the shifter back. And then as soon as it sees that voltage rise above 2.5 or go down below 2.5, obviously you can set a threshold, or the window at which it's going to work. You can set that threshold real wide if you want to be pulling on the shifter hard, or narrow. Every driver's different, every shifter's different. So once you make a couple passes with the car, you can get that dialed in. But basically it initiates this green cut. So that's the engine limiter. And that's what makes the RPMs fall and engage the next gear. So you pull on the shifter and initiates the cut, makes the RPMs fall to the next gear. You run it through third gear, right? Pull on it, it initiates the cut based on voltage. Right, that green line is the cut, brings RPM down, grabs the next gear. So that's basically how the flat shift or no lift shift feature works in Red Demon. It's all based on the shifter and how hard you're pulling or pushing on that shifter. So for this next screen, like I said, we're always going to kind of keep that red, or the RPM as a baseline, just so you know where we are in the pass and what's going on. All right, we're going to look at temperatures in this pass. So we've got air intake temperature I've got pulled up, and then we've also got exhaust gas temperature. So a couple different things. Your intake air temperatures are really, really crucial, especially when you're on gasoline, right? They become a little bit less crucial when you're on ethanol because you've got the cooling capacity of the fuel. Now, once you switch to methanol, there's a lot of cars that elect not to use an intercooler. We use the intercooler with Red Demon just because it gives us a little bit more of a tuning window to where like the IATs are not super duper hot, because they can get 200, 300, 400 degrees if you're not using an intercooler. So basically, if we take a look at the intake temperatures at the beginning of the pass, right here on launch control, we're at 78 degrees, so about 80 degrees. All right, by the end of the pass, 130 degrees. So roughly 50-degree temperature rise. Now, that seems like a lot, but when you're running 100 pounds of boost, there's a lot of heat associated with that. When you compress the air, it gets really, really hot. 50 degrees in temperature rise is actually really good, especially given the fact that we're compressing the air so much. So we've seen GTRs at 1,200 horsepower that have an undersized intercooler on them, and the IAT temps will be north of 250 degrees in a pass. So this is really, really good. And then on top of it, 133 degrees is nothing, especially once you're using the methanol. So you get the methanol involved, and then that actually chemically cools the air charge as well. So really, really nice intake air temps. These are the EGTs, so exhaust gas temperatures per cylinder. So the reason why we want to measure those per cylinder is so you can see if there's any deviations from one cylinder to the other. So normally when you're tuning a car and you're talking about how rich or how lean it is or how much fuel it has, you're going by a sensor that's in the downpipe, right? And that's going to be an overall estimate or an overall average of the 4 cylinders, right? You can't look at one cylinder specifically with a wideband in a downpipe. That gives you the average. This gives you specific cylinder data. So say you've got a cylinder that's too hot. In our Haltech engine management system, we can actually add fuel to that cylinder and cool it down and bring it back in line with the other cylinders, right? Say you've got a cylinder that's too cool, right? You can do the same, take a little bit of fuel out of it, right? Now, why would a cylinder be hot or why would a cylinder be cool? Just because every single cylinder on the engine is not going to flow the same amount of air, right? Especially when you've got a manifold where the throttle body is on one side of the engine, right? And you've got one cylinder real far from the throttle body and one cylinder real close to the throttle body, right? That air distribution isn't going to be perfect. So this allows you to really dial in the air-fuel mixture and get it perfect across all 4 cylinders, even with some not getting the same amount of airflow. So really, really critical data. Now what's really important, or actually what's really interesting about this, is you can see cylinder number 4 on the top of the pass go crazy. So almost 200 degrees warmer than the other ones. In the middle of the pass, let's take a look at the cylinders. We're all within about 50, 60 degrees, maybe 70 degrees of each other. Let's check 3rd gear. Yeah, really close in 3rd gear. All right, 4th gear, yeah, about 50 degrees, 70 degrees. And then right on the top of 4th gear, number 4 got really, really hot. We know why that happened. We took the valve cover off after the pass and we lost an exhaust rocker arm midway through 4th gear. So probably on that limiter, when the car was banging off the limiter, it probably threw the rocker arm, right? The engine's not supposed to operate on the limiter. That's kind of like a safety feature, right? But you want to stay off the limiter. Whenever a car's on the limiter, especially when it's making peak power at 100 pounds of boost, it's not ideal. So we threw a rocker arm there, and it's evident by the EGTs because you can see them skyrocket in the log. All right, so just kind of some cool information here. These are the longitudinal G's of the car. So basically how much G-force is pushing back into the seat when you launch the car. And this is confirmed by the Draggy. The Draggy actually has very, very similar readings where it's, hovering just above 2 in 1st gear, 2.3, 2.4, and then it maintains 2 Gs for most of 2nd gear. 3rd gear looks like we're about 1.6 Gs. In the top of 3rd gear, it drops below 1.5 Gs. But what I thought was pretty cool is if you get in here, we're looking at Gs and vehicle speed. This car is holding 2 Gs all the way to 103 miles an hour, basically. So you got 2 Gs pushing you in the back of the seat all the way to 100 miles an hour, or through 1st and 2nd gear. So pretty fun stuff. Another cool feature with Red Demon is it's equipped with shock travel sensors. So we've got sensors on both front shocks and both rear shocks to basically monitor the movement of the car. This is really, really key in the beginning of the pass, right? And through the first couple of gear changes, and it allows us to make sure that the car is planted and it's not making any unnecessary movements, especially when the car's coming out of the hole and hitting the first couple gears. So once it's down track, it's more related to the track surface because there's going to be some bumps and some jerks and some stuff in the track surface, but the actual shock settings for both rebound and compression can be adjusted based on what you see with these sensors. So you can see first and second gear, I would say, are the really crucial ones for these shock travel sensors and what we like to look at. So through first gear, if you look down here, right, so both the front and the rear, as we're launching the car, this is vehicle speed. So this is the car's stationary. You can see there's no movement. Vehicle speed 0. The second the car starts moving, it loads the suspension. But once it does load the suspension, both compressing the rear and lifting the front, it maintains the entire pull through the gear. So basically that shows that the car is squatting and maintaining that same geometry of the suspension as it pulls all the way through first gear. So you're not getting any humping or any herking or jerking or jumping as you're launching the car. So really, really important. You're always going to see a little something on the gear shift, right? But then the same thing in second gear. So you're in power about right here in second gear, and you can see the front and the rear suspension all the way through first and second gear. Nice, flat, steady, and beautiful. So that has really, really helped us concentrating on messing with the shock sensors, or the shock settings in both first and second gear, and being able to refine those two gears. Like I said, this stuff down track, that's just going to be kind of what the car is going to do based on the track. Like, for example, in Maryland, in the left lane, in mid-third gear, there's a pretty good bump, and that's exactly what this is right here. Right? Or actually, you know what? This one was in the right lane. So, but I do have logs. You know, maybe the right lane's got it a little bit too. It's really evident in the left lane though. So left lane, 330 before the 8th, there's a pretty big bump there, and it shows up on your logs. Great Lakes Dragway, the track that we have here local to us. In fourth gear, about the 1,000 foot, there was a really, really bad bump. And the same thing, you would catch that on the shock travel data. And that kind of stuff, there's really nothing you can do. Having the knowledge that the bump in the track is there and seeing it on your log can be really, really valuable, because then you can know when the track conditions are kind of going away, like, hey, this part of the track where there's that bump, I don't want to put too much in it. So you can actually base your tune-ups. You know, a track's never going to be perfect. The environment's never going to be ideal, right? So you got to kind of work around that. That's what that's what racing's about. So taking in information, making the best decisions you can, and putting that tune-up together, that's going to go out there and win your races. So I hope you guys enjoyed the log. If you guys like what you're seeing, we're going to keep bringing you guys this stuff we've never shown anybody before. Inside the Red Demon, getting it ready for the event, competing with the car, working on it all night long, all that stuff coming your way. Make sure you subscribe.